What is going on, all you wonderful A-plusers out there? It is I, Stuart, here once again, this time to give you more live viewer questions, something I was originally planning on doing last week, but I'm now going to be doing today, this week. Basically, this is going to be one really big catch-up game. So, those of you who've been keeping up with A+ Hero Reports the last couple weeks, you'll probably know that we've been falling a little bit behind on live viewer questions, and that is really because, like, when we started, the new channel, the amount of viewer questions we got would be like up to 6 or 7, but it's just been getting so much, and both Adam and I, we have very limited time during Hero Report because the show already goes on for sometimes up to 3 hours, so we genuinely just kind of like lose track of time, and unfortunately we don't always have time for the live viewer questions, and it's why going forward, more than likely we're going to be changing it to one question per email. That all being said, I thought it would be kind of fun to do like a really big catch-up video. So essentially one where all I'm doing is reading live viewer questions out loud to you guys and answering them. And depending on how this video does, depending on how much fun it is to do, we might make this more of a regular thing. Like, we'll probably still do the live viewer questions at the end of every Hero Report, therefore you can get both Adam and mine's perspective on the whole thing. But I'm thinking we might also have kind of a midweek live viewer question as well, for specifically all the questions we weren't able to get to. Like, if we choose to do one question per email, we might also like kind of save the other questions in that email for this event specifically. Now, don't take that as you can write more than 3 questions, because I still think 3 is kind of a good limit to put on that, especially because, like, as our subscriber count continues to grow more and more every week, the amount of questions that we're getting is getting more and more. So for now, this is going to be kind of a little bit of a test video, essentially, to see how it all goes. And if you guys like this format, let me know in the comments below. And in the future, I'm going to try to do this live. Currently, I'm doing it all pre-recorded. That's really because currently it's a bit late for me to get it up on YouTube at this moment, and tomorrow morning I have work really early, so I'm kind of thinking if I just record it today, upload it tomorrow, it should hopefully work with YouTube's algorithm and all that kind of stuff. But yeah, now that I've delayed this for as long as I can, it's time to get into the live viewer questions. I love doing that. It's way too fun. So let's start with question number 1 from Danny Morales. Actually, he has 2 questions. All right, so question number 1. What do you think of Javicia Leslie and Katie Lott's pitched ideas for their shows Batwoman and Legends of Tomorrow if both shows were saved? I haven't heard either of these pitches, but that would be kind of interesting to, that would be interesting for me to check out, so I will definitely do so. Having not seen what their pitches are, I can tell you that, Javicia Leslie has been on Batwoman for a couple of seasons now, and then, of course, Katie Lotz, not only has she been on Legends since the beginning, she's been part of the Arrowverse ever since season 2 of Arrow. So I do think that, when you get enough experience on a show, you tend to really know the characters very well. You tend to really know the formula of the writing that goes into it. So I do feel like, an actor turning into a writer for the show, or, pitching in ideas for the writing in the show later on, it does work normally. A lot of times I think it works out for the better for everyone, so I'm definitely open to the idea of seeing what it was that they have to pitch. So as of now, I'm going to say that sounds cool, having not actually heard what their pitches are. If their pitches end up being something really stupid, probably not. But I honestly, again, have no idea. I'm just going by, the idea, like, I'd be a little bit more interested, if I'm being honest, to listening to Katie Lotz's pitch, because she's been around a little bit longer. But that being said, obviously, I definitely want to hear what Javicia Leslie's pitch is for Batwoman, because even though she's only been around for two seasons, she does seem to really enjoy the character, so I would be kind of curious to hear what some of her ideas for future episodes would have been. Question number 2. What asshole and douchebag from a movie to TV series do you enjoy watching? Who had a really good story and reason for being a douchebag and an asshole? I actually have the perfect answer for this one, at least perfect to my opinion. I've always loved Gary King from The World's End. The World's End is like my second favorite comedy of all time. It's one of the best written movies I've ever seen. It's one of those movies you watch over and over and over, and there's so many subtle like things with every single line that goes into it. Like there's not a single wasted line in the movie, and that's very hard to pull off, especially for a comedy. Every line, every scene moves something forward. And what I love about Gary King is that he's just this douchebag that like treats his friends kind of like crap, but he always kind of plays the victim while doing so. And it feels very real because of that. There's a lot of people like that who just, haven't really gotten a good look at themselves in the mirror and haven't really seen that, it's not necessarily about the actions that affect themselves. It's more about how they affect the people around you. And that's kind of Gary's, like, one of Gary's many journeys that he learns, throughout The World's End. I don't want to spoil too much about the movie because this is one of those movies I actually have to say the less you know going into it, the better. There is an aspect of the movie that I wish they didn't show us in the trailers, because I think if you go into this movie just expecting it to be five guys going to different bars over and over, it's a lot of fun, when a lot of the twists and turns kind of come in. But that being said, I think Gary King is one of the best characters ever written, like in that movie and then just in media altogether. He's a douchebag, but you can't help but love him every time he's on screen. So, I'd say that Gary King is my favorite movie douchebag of all time. What do you think of Johnny Depp during his and Amber Heard's trial using footage from the Aquaman movie? And did you know he said he helped Amber get her job as Mara? Do you think this whole trial situation is ridiculous? I feel like this tells people that Johnny never loved Amber. Excuse me. So currently, now keep in mind, I haven't been like really paying attention to the trial. I've really only been watching a lot of the highlights, and they are absolutely hilarious. The issue with a lot of the highlights is it really doesn't tell you which one of the two is more guilty than the other. It really just kind of shows you a bunch of people testifying and giving like weird things, saying weird things, doing weird things that really don't seem to be related to the trial. And even if it is related to the trial, I'm usually just so amazed by what's going on. I just kind of can't really believe it, So one example, for example, is you have one dude who was basically testifying against, I don't remember if he was testifying against Amber or Johnny. I don't even remember what he was saying. That's like the funniest thing about how ridiculous this situation is. But he was testifying on Zoom while driving and smoking pot out of a vape pen. So, things like that. This whole trial to me, I feel like would make a great courtroom comedy. As for like, whose side I'm on, I don't want to take sides because I really don't know anywhere near enough about the situation. I know that they both kind of seem scummy in their own ways. I think I'm leaning way more towards Johnny Depp's side than Amber Heard's, and that's because everything I've personally seen definitely suggests that Amber Heard was a lot more abusive, like physically abusive in the relationship. As for him using footage of Aquaman, because that was really what the question was all about, I kind of just went on a big tangent there. I haven't seen that part of the trial, but I find it funny. I did hear that he'd helped get her job as Mara. Okay, we got Andre Thomas, 1999. All right. I'm Andre. Saw the trailer review for the new Thor Love and Thunder movie and the Lady Hulk. What did you think when Thor was first announced as a live action for the Marvel Cinematic Universe and the Hulk? Okay, so that's actually a good question. So for the first Hulk movie that came out that was, connected to the MCU, for the longest time, I actually thought it was meant to be a sequel to the 2003 movie where they recasted everyone, and I wasn't the biggest fan of that movie, so I actually didn't see the 2008 Hulk movie in theaters. Like, I did know that it was connected to Iron Man because after Iron Man came out, that was when, we started getting the big news that, Marvel is really trying to commit to making a cinematic universe. Although, I'm not going to lie, I was one of the people that doubted they were actually going to go through with it. I doubted the existence of an Avengers movie happening. So let me just point that out there. I was definitely on the doubtful side of the whole thing. But that being said, the Incredible Hulk movie, I wasn't really looking forward to that. But Thor, I was extremely curious about. Like, even in high school, I didn't think it would work, a Thor movie, like, in live action. When I saw the trailer, though, and I saw the direction they were going with, the idea of kind of having it be your kind of typical, in a lot of ways, very typical kind of 80s movie in a lot of ways. The sense of, the fish out of water thing. You see this a lot in fantasy movies. Master of the Universe is probably the easiest example I can think of, where the budget isn't there to tell the story you want to tell. So all you can really do is take elements of that story and put it in a more grounded, a more down to earth world. So basically, usually it starts out in a cool fantasy setting, but then one of the fantasy characters gets teleported to the real world, where they're forced to develop, character growth, essentially. We saw it with Masters of the Universe, and now we see it here with Thor. And I thought that if you were going to make a Thor movie, that would be the only way it would work. And of course, kind of seeing Thor Ragnarok and seeing the trailer for the upcoming Thor movie, Love and Thunder, I think I no longer think that anymore. I think that if any studio out there can make a ridiculous, over the top idea work in the movie theaters, it's Marvel. They just they make anything work, even things that really shouldn't work. Next one is from Morgan Hutchinson. Hopefully I said that right. What did you think of Ryan Reynolds? What did you think when Ryan Reynolds was first casted as Deadpool, and has been an excellent choice now that he's getting a third film? When he was originally cast as Deadpool back in 2009 when Wolverine came out, I wasn't the biggest fan of him as Deadpool, but it had nothing to do with his performance. I was still very much into the idea of Ryan Reynolds playing the character of Deadpool, because I feel like he had the perfect charisma to pull it off. And then for me also, whenever I see an actor really pushing to be a certain character, I tend to support those actors a lot more, because usually if you're pushing to play someone very specific because you admire that character, it usually means you're going to give a much better performance for that character, because there's passion behind it. So knowing that, all going into the first Deadpool movie, I was extremely excited when they finally, back in 2018, said, 2016, it wasn't that recent. Yeah, it was back in 2016 when they finally went for the Deadpool movie. First we had that little bit of test footage that got quote unquote leaked, and then the internet theorizes that Ryan Reynolds leaked the footage, although that hasn't been proven. But that said, that footage alone was enough to get me excited about the idea of a real Deadpool movie with Ryan Reynolds playing Deadpool, and then actually seeing the Deadpool movie play out the way it did. I thought it was excellent. I feel like Ryan Reynolds was the perfect choice for the character. And yeah, I mean, I don't really know what I can say about Ryan Reynolds' Deadpool that hasn't already been said by everyone else on the internet, other than, it's perfect, honestly. The second question: what did you think of Doctor Strange 2 Multiverse of Madness? If you have seen it, and if you have heard rumors of Secret Wars, which is a huge team-up crossover that was echoed in MOM. So I'll get my thoughts on the movie Multiverse of Madness first. I thought Multiverse of Madness was really fun, a really fun movie. It's not really one of my favorite Marvel movies, but it's definitely one that I can just play anytime and enjoy. I think Sam Raimi was so perfect as a director for this. You really get to see him having a lot of fun. Now, Secret Wars. I mean, I don't really know of any tie-ins or anything to really set up Secret Wars in Multiverse of Madness. I mean, I guess the closest thing you kind of get is the idea that if they do like kind of a Secret Wars, they could go multiversal with it rather than picking some select, like, very popular characters within the MCU. They could just like literally go all around, different Marvel movies, selecting which character was popular from which movie, and I feel like you could have some great chemistry there if that's the direction they wanted to go with it. But at this point, I don't even know if we even know they're doing a Secret Wars movie yet. I think currently the only one that's confirmed, the only like secret, titled Marvel project that we know of is Secret Invasion, which will, in the comic books, it involved the Skrulls, but I don't know how they're going to do it with the MCU, because obviously the Skrulls as villains wouldn't work as well, because they're not villains in the MCU, as we kind of have seen through Captain Marvel. So I'm not too sure in what way it ends up like tying into Secret Wars, but if it does later on, I'm all for it. I think if you're going to do Secret Wars, you kind of got to go multiverse with it at this point if you want to do something new with the premise of Secret Wars. I should have brought some water because my mouth is getting a bit dry. All right, the next question comes from Doomsday. In what way do you think Black Panther Wakanda Forever is going to honor Chadwick Boseman? That is a very good question. I think I've mentioned this a lot of times where, like, I'm just kind of... I stand by this very strongly. I think Black Panther 2 is probably going to be the most difficult, or I guess it had to have been the most difficult Marvel movie to make, both writing wise and production wise, just from everything that we've heard, and not to mention, just losing such an awesome actor, to play the character. It's really hard to say how it is you can how you can make a sequel movie that isn't going to involve recasting him, and is also supposedly not going to involve him passing down the mantle, but also still paying tribute to that character, and also, supposedly not even killing him off in the movie. So, it sounds like a big task, and I honestly have no idea how they're going to be able to pull it off. Like, I wish them the best of luck, but man, I really don't know how they're going to be able to pull off making a really good movie, but also being able to check the check marks while honoring Chadwick Boseman. So the only way I can really think of it, honestly, is if and I don't know if this would be in poor taste, but I think if you were to kill off T'Challa off screen and have it be that he had passed away from cancer, but like had inspired so many people, and therefore you kind of have like you get like a montage of women and children all around the world, kind of similar to the way they did it in Spider-Verse, where you have them all like doing this big worldwide memorial, all of them wearing like this Halloween costume of a Black Panther mask over their face, to really honor the death of Black Panther. And then it would also kind of just show us, much like with Chadwick Boseman as a person, he's this guy that has done so much for so many people, like not just as an actor, but like like we've seen that he's done so many Make-A-Wish visits that he himself has, tried to make sure they never were published or anything like that, because a lot of times, not trying to say that actors who do Make-A-Wish visits are always just in there for the publicity, but the publicity is always a big part of it. So when an actor goes out of its way to make sure it's not being published, or it's not, being televised or anything like that, it really kind of shows you that they're doing this Make-A-Wish visit because they really care. And that's the vibe you get from a person like Chadwick Boseman. And so I think the coolest way to honor him would be to show Black Panther inspiring people all across the world the same way Chadwick Boseman did, if that makes sense. But they may not do that, because I've heard, a rumor that they probably aren't going to be killing him off in the movie. And if that ends up being true, to be honest, I really don't know how you honor such a big legacy like that. So I guess I'll have to leave this question blank. I'm sorry. Okay, so the next question comes in from Gabriel Glacio. What are some of your favorite Adam Sandler movies from the 80s, 90s, and 2000s? And do you think his past movie do you think his movies past films have dropped in quality? Movies past films have dropped. I'm not sure. I assume you mean like his most recent movies, if they've dropped in quality over time. Um, I believe he has done a few Netflix movies that were huge hits where he played serialized, serialized? Is that serialized characters? So, like characters who like continue on from one episode. I'm kind of confused what you mean by serialized characters. Uh, is that like meant to be serialized characters? I don't know. As for some of my favorite Adam Sandler movies, there's a few that I actually really enjoyed from back in the day. I think it was Big Daddy, which is where he adopts a little kid. I always really liked that movie. I thought that was incredibly adorable. I liked Click a lot more than most people did, and I totally get the critique of it. But I do majorly disagree with anyone who tries to say that the drama that we get at the very end of the movie feels very out of touch with everything that we got beforehand. I do think the transition from comedy to drama worked really well in that movie, and I think they did a good job of that. Not a lot of people like a combination of the two, but I think it can be done if it's done right, and I think Click did it really good. And man, okay, this is going to be probably a decently hot take here, and I don't care. I really like The Longest Yard. I actually think that might be my favorite Adam Sandler movie, and I know a lot of people really hate this movie because they think it kind of disrespects the original. I definitely disagree. It's very different from the original. Like, yeah, it's the exact same plot that you've gotten from the original movie, but it very much has a very different tone to it in terms of, like, you know, the other was a comedy, yeah, but it wasn't like really the over the top slapsticky kind of comedy, whereas the remake is very much like the over the top, very slapsticky kind of comedy. My whole thing is that I feel like the remake moves at just such a better pace, really, than the original, and I feel like it's different enough so I can still appreciate both movies as they are. As to whether or not I like the remake more than the original, I wouldn't quite go that far, but I would say that they're both great movies in their own right. And if you like the original Longest Yard, I really don't see why you wouldn't like the one with Adam Sandler in it. It's one of those movies. It's one of those Adam Sandler movies that doesn't really get talked about that much anymore, which is too bad because it's one that I personally really enjoy. Following any of his classic films, you'll like to that you'd like to get a revival or a continuation with him. Nah, you know, even the movies that he does that I like, I feel like everything he does is really just a one and done. And oh yeah, right. So I never finished the first or the second part of that first question. So yeah, I don't think it's necessarily that the quality of his movies have really dropped so much as it is with a lot of kind of more seasoned comedians. That's not me calling Adam Sandler old. That's just me saying he's been around for a while. You know, it becomes challenging more and more because the idea of what's funny and what isn't really changes so many times over years, essentially. Things that we thought were funny back then are just not that funny to us anymore, only because we've heard that joke so many times by now that it's gotten old and we need something new. And, you know, it's something really hard for like a lot of older comedians because they had their whole fan base built on this kind of thing. For Adam Sandler specifically, it's kind of like the being really loud and obnoxious out of nowhere kind of fart humor, which was really funny in the early 2000s. The idea of, you know, just you got a lot of times his movies would have that formula of you got like a lot of people around him playing like the straight down to earth characters, but then Adam Sandler would be that wacky out of this world kind of guy, and the comedy really kind of came from his interactions with the other people that, you know, play it more normal, if that's like a good way to say it. But the problem is that so many comedies have done that, you know, since then, and they've done it better. Like It's Always Sunny in Philadelphia, to me, is kind of that perfect example where you have a group of people that run a bar and they're so bad at what they do, and they're just like such like bizarre people altogether, like just these horrible really, really bad business people. And the funniest gags you get from that is when they're, interacting with people that aren't like them. Like the trial episodes end up being really funny because you get these no nonsense judges and juries that end up having to deal with their shenanigans, and that's when the comedy really works. And it worked like that with Adam Sandler for a while, but unfortunately, I think what it just kind of comes down to is like he does it kind of the same way each time, and eventually the joke kind of gets old. And it's why I think one of his revivals, Hotel Transylvania, which was a really big hit of his, I think that one worked really well for his favor, because that was one of those few times where he really went out of his way to try a different type of comedy. And I think when you go out of your way to try something new, you may find that you have better luck if you try to reach like a more modern audience, which is something that Adam Sandler just hasn't tried to do enough. Now, I think a lot with his Netflix movies, because I've seen one of them, and I don't know if all his Netflix movies are like this, but what was interesting is that it was the same kind of humor that I'm used to from Adam Sandler, but now it was R-rated. And I think, it was enough for me to get a couple of good laughs every now and then, but it didn't make it for a good movie. It just made it for some good, cheap laughs every now and then. All right, so our next question is from Alexander Rosario. Talked about this a lot on A Plus More Phenomenal, but what do you two cool dudes want to see and look forward to for the Hasbro Power Rangers universe reboot when it eventually comes out? Do you prefer straight to Netflix, theaters, or both? I know the 2017 movie didn't sell so well in theaters. Both Marvel and DCEU films go to theaters, and even later go to HBO Max and Disney Plus. Okay, so stuff that I want to see in the Power Rangers movie universe reboot. Personally, if they're going to reboot the universe, which I know we're all pretty sure is what's going to happen, I really hope that they kind of they do it the same way that J.J. Abrams rebooted Star Trek, in the sense of we do like a time travel storyline, a good time travel storyline, all right, in order to split this new rebooted universe off of the, regular Power Rangers timeline. Therefore, you could have two timelines. You could have one timeline that really focuses on the rebooted universe, where Hasbro has all the creative control that they want, very similar to what J.J. Abrams did with the Star Trek movies. The Star Trek movies can still live on, but they don't have to worry about connecting to any of the television shows that are currently going on too. And, you could also have television shows that connect to the movie universe too, if they wanted to take it in a slightly different direction than Star Trek. What I think I'm overall trying to say is that the split timeline should be where some of the more mature Power Rangers content goes. So like if they want to have like a more edgy series that goes for like an older audience, I think the movie timeline is where you could do that. But if they wanted to stick to the main timeline, the one that a lot of kids still like to watch, and of course a lot of Power Rangers fans still like to watch, I think they should keep it going, but keep it as a separate continuity altogether. Keep it, or maybe, same continuity, but separate timeline. Therefore, you don't have too many people questioning why it is that certain storylines don't line up the way that they should. I think if they explain it away the same exact way Star Trek does it, I think you can have your cake and eat it too. You can please both, hardcore Power Rangers fans, and you have a way of introducing new fans to something, very brand new without having to intimidate them with 29 seasons of content. That's personally the direction I would take it in. As for whether or not I prefer going to Netflix or theaters, I think kind of the same. I personally would like to have the movies go to theaters, even if it's for a very limited release. I don't mind the idea of movies going straight to streaming services. I just feel like every movie, even ones that I freaking hate, I feel like if someone has put in the effort to actually make a full-length movie, it deserves to have a very limited theatrical release, no matter how boring it is, no matter how bad it is. Someone put their heart and soul into this, and they deserve, the amazing feeling of watching their work on the big screen. I don't think anyone deserves to have that taken from them if they've put in the effort. All right, so our next question comes from Carter Matthews. So the question is, What do you think of The Rock's films? So Dwayne Johnson's films, not to be confused with the movie called The Rock. Really bad joke. I apologize. I'm personally not a fan of his. I think a lot of his movies are ridiculous without substance. I only liked him in the Fast and Furious films and the spin-offs Hobbs and Shaw. Personally, I find a lot of his movies to be, ridiculous over the top. I don't actually end up watching some of them. Like there were a couple that I still haven't seen. One of them I hear is actually pretty fun, but it's the movie Rampage. I never saw that. And then I also never saw that weird Die Hard type movie where it's like him in a building trying to save his family. It looked basically like a remake of Die Hard. I never saw that one. But for the most part, I kind of get what you mean. Like a lot of his movies are over the top, and I think the best way to look at Dwayne Johnson is kind of the same way I like to look at Adam Sandler. There are Adam Sandler movies, and then there are movies that star Adam Sandler. I find that, recently a lot of Adam Sandler movies I'm not really the biggest fan of, but movies that aren't really produced by his company, but just kind of have him as a character in the movie. I tend to enjoy those a little bit more. There was a movie he did recently, I think it was Uncut Gems, I believe. I actually really enjoyed him in that movie, and I thought the movie itself was pretty good. So I think the same can be said with Dwayne Johnson. A lot of films that he was in the early 2000s, I feel like he did a lot more variety in a lot of his roles. He would play like very different characters, but I think because he grew so much success over the years, he ended up having a lot more control over like how his movies would be produced and how his character that he plays, the characters he would play would be portrayed as. And I think that's kind of when a lot of his movies kind of, I don't want to say necessarily went downhill, because a lot of them were still good, but that's when he kind of went into this cycle of constantly playing the same character over and over in a lot of his movies. Now, he played that character really well in all of his movies, but it's still kind of that same, very much like he's just playing himself, but like on another, in a different, movie with a different name. And, for the most part, I do think that his good movies do outweigh his bad movies. I can't say that for sure, because again, I haven't seen all of them, but there are several movies I really enjoy him, and I love him in the Jumanji movies. I really liked him in the Fast and Furious movies. I really like him. God, what else? I really liked Scorpion King back in the day. It was a bad movie, but it's like, it was a fun kind of bad movie. Yeah, so, I think it really, with him, it just kind of depends on the movie itself. A lot of times it works, sometimes it doesn't, I guess. I don't know. That all being said, let's move on to his next question. What actor and or musician you never want to be in a superhero movie or even series, and why? So what actor or musician do I never want to see come into a superhero movie? I guess I should just kind of go with an actor that I just don't think is a very good actor. Or I guess, actually, okay, I got a hot take on this one. A lot of people wanted to see him in the newest Doctor Strange movie, but spoiler alert, it didn't happen. Tom Cruise. And it's not because I don't think Tom Cruise is a good actor. I just feel like he would take a little bit too much control over the movie, and it just wouldn't be what they were originally going for, and that's usually when a production nightmare kind of happens. Like, I think The Mummy is probably a good example where there were like quite a few changes he made to the script. Now, maybe the script would have sucked regardless, maybe, but I can definitely tell you that whatever input he did have on the script really didn't help, because it ended up still being a really bad movie. And I feel like he would kind of do that if he went into a superhero movie. The other big thing too is that if he was in a superhero movie, they would have to, there would have to be like a weird adjustment into like the characters around him, because they wouldn't, basically Tom Cruise's contract is that you can't make any money off of his likenesses when it comes to marketing, so they wouldn't be able to sell any toys of his character from whatever superhero movie he was playing. So they would have to put so much work into marketing everything else around him, and I just don't see it making for a good movie. So even though I don't think Tom Cruise is a bad actor, I'm gonna go with Tom Cruise for my answer. All right, this next question is for Nicole Robertson. Do you agree or disagree that fans think Brie Larson as and I assume you mean with fans that think Brie Larson as Captain America was being way too toxic or trying to show women empowerment. What did you think of her and Mark Ruffalo's cameo at the end of Marvel's Shang-Chi in the post-credit scene? I actually really like that cameo. And as for like Brie Larson, I mean, okay, so I keep hearing she's like not the easiest person to work with behind the scenes, but very much like the stuff about Shuri from Black Panther Wakanda Forever, I have yet to actually hear it from someone who's actually worked with her. I constantly hear this from people, who claim they know people that work with her, but that's about it, right? So I don't take any of that for value. The one piece of evidence people try to use is like during an interview with her and Don Cheadle, there was this whole thing where she like calls him his best buddy and then like elbows him. And he's like, just don't touch me. A lot of people don't realize that Don Cheadle does like a lot of comedy in interviews. Like he does a bit all the time. Like there was this whole thing where Kevin Fart, wow, that was not on purpose. Kevin Hart. Kevin Fart. I wonder if anyone's ever used that before. I'm sure they have. But there was one interview with him and Kevin Hart where Kevin Hart jokes about his age, and the two of them really get into it afterwards, like they're having an argument. But it wasn't like they were actually arguing. It's just that they saw an opportunity for like a funny bit, and they both went for it. And I think the whole thing with Brie Larson during that interview was that I don't think she caught on to the bit as fast as like other comedians would have, and so she kind of just ended it there. That's what I'm pretty sure happened. I don't think there was actually anything between the two of them. So I don't think she's toxic. At least I haven't seen any evidence to suggest that she's toxic. I think the only toxicity that really comes from Brie Larson as a person is from the fan base that just, pretends to hate her, but hasn't actually gone out of their way to see her performance in Captain Marvel. Or maybe they didn't like her, but they feel like, her giving a performance that wasn't to their standards isn't a good enough justifiable reason to hate her. So they have to make up certain things about her, about her performance or about her as a person in order to feel justified in talking shit about her. That's kind of what I think it really all comes down to. In the MCU itself, it almost feels like they're kind of acknowledging that, because a lot of times when Captain Marvel comes up in conversation, people tend to kind of brush her off. And I feel like that's definitely going to be something we're going to see played out in the Marvels. Like, I do kind of feel like one of the main plots might be that people don't like Captain Marvel because, in both her own movie and in everything we've seen from her, like in crossing over with other MCU characters, it reminds me of the pilot for Angel. Being a superhero isn't necessarily all about just stopping the bad guys, but it's about reaching out to people and letting them know that there's hope. And we don't really see that from Captain Marvel. She never really reaches out for the little guy yet. And I think that's what they're going to be really exploring in her movie. The whole thing where we see Monica kind of not seeming very happy that someone else brought her name up in conversation kind of goes with that idea. Like, there's a good chance that she's mad at her for leaving and never coming back. So I think that's going to be her arc going forward. And I hope that people will look at this in an open mind and kind of realize, even if she wasn't the character that they, was their standard of what they thought Captain Marvel should have been, at least like, after seeing whatever they're doing with her arc, they might have a little bit of an open mind to kind of realize, okay, maybe that was the point. They wanted to complete her character arc over time, rather than just wasting it all in just one Captain Marvel film. But obviously that's all we got to wait and see, how the Marvel movie comes out. I think it's just called The Marvels. I'm not sure, because it's going to have her, Photon, and Miss Marvel in it, from what I understand. All right, here we go. Next question is from Marcelino Vasquez. Today's questions are CW themed, so I'm going to enjoy these. So question number 1, I'm going to say this isn't 100% true, and if it came off that way, I apologize. But here it is. Excuse me. I know you guys trash the Powerpuff Girls live action adaptation every chance you get, especially since it was picked up over Painkiller. But if the CW decides to go through with it, are you secretly hoping it's a good show? Especially since the CW has taken liberties to listen to fan complaints. Okay. I only started trash talking the show when I saw the script for it and I saw that it didn't get picked up. I was kind of rooting for this show. I want that to be clear. Okay, what was going through my mind is that someone like Berlanti, who has actually done a lot of really good work, like he's done the movie Love, Simon, which a lot of people really love. I still haven't actually seen it yet, so I'll get on that soon, though. I swear, I'll watch it eventually. But, of course, he's produced so much from the DC side of television that, the Arrowverse wouldn't be what it is if he had never started it with a show, with the very first, series of Arrow, because Arrow was just, whatever you think of the Arrowverse now, there's no denying that Arrowverse started as a really awesome show back in season 1. All that being said, my logic was that if a guy like Greg Berlanti, unironically is trying to pitch a live-action Powerpuff Girls show, he has to know that that idea sounds so ridiculous and stupid that no one would ever go for it. So the only way a guy like him would go for pitching a show like that is if he was 100% confident that his idea might be worth something, that there was a brilliant idea somewhere in there, in his overall live-action Powerpuff Girls kind of idea for a film, right? That was the logic I had going into it. What I saw from the script did not match what I was expecting, coming from Greg Berlanti. It really just kind of ended up being very much like, it kind of felt like a college humor sketch in a lot of ways. Because you have the Powerpuff Girls and kind of being like a little more raunchy, but it doesn't feel like raunchy, like real talk type of raunchy. It feels like, the same thing I don't like about a lot of the more mature side of Titans, where it's like Titans doesn't feel like it's a show that's edgy. Or because of the story, it feels like they just want to be edgy and the story is like a second thought. They're kind of like, how can we make the show edgy? We'll worry about the plot and story afterwards. And that's kind of the idea I got from Powerpuff Girls. It's raunchy. It's like, what kind of raunchy jokes can we fit in here? And then we'll think of the story afterwards. That's what it all kind of came down to. And I don't think it works if that's the direction you want to approach. You want to come up with your story and plot first, and then think of hey, if this is the story we're going for, what would be, raunchy about this story. And that's not really what it seems that they went with, in terms of the Powerpuff Girls series. So God, I can't even remember. I just remember. Oh, if the show ends up being good. Yeah, sorry. I actually forgot the question halfway through. If it ends up being good, then awesome. I'm happy for it. I'm happy to know that someone had an idea for a live action Powerpuff Girls movie and they figured out how to actually make it good, which is just, kind of mind blowing to me in a way. And I don't mean that in a mean way. I mean, just, it just doesn't seem like a series that's meant to be live action, but someone figured out the code. I would never be able to figure out how to make a live action Powerpuff Girls show that's good, but I'm so glad someone else was able to. I have nothing against it, existing. Okay, next question. Sorry, there's 3 questions from Marcelino Vasquez. I know the DC embargo causes a lot of intended ideas to be scrapped and problems for the creative team because Warner Brothers don't want no more than one version of each character existing at once. But what are some of the positive aspects of the embargo has done for the better DC? I literally can't think of anything good that came out of the embargo. Maybe, and this is a very big maybe Justice League Unlimited's writing would have gone downhill if it wasn't for the Bat embargo, because when that show came out, you also had the Batman coming out at the same time. So kind of the rule for Justice League Unlimited is that they were allowed to use Batman, but they weren't allowed to use any Batman characters besides him. So none of their villains, they weren't allowed to use Nightwing or Batgirl or any characters that were existing on Titans for the most part. Arsenal had a cameo in Justice League Unlimited, but for the most part, they were, they weren't allowed to use any characters that were already being used from both Teen Titans and for the Batman. And according to the writers of the show, they actually didn't really mind these embargoes because it gave them an excuse to explore characters that essentially normally comic book fans would have never heard of. There are so many DC characters that I know about because of Justice League Unlimited, and there's a chance, and I'm not going to say this is with 100% fact because again, we don't know what the show would have looked like if it hadn't been for the embargoes, but we can say for sure the episodes that we have gotten from Justice League Unlimited have helped introduce me personally to all these amazing characters I would have never known about had Justice League Unlimited never existed to begin with. So maybe that's one thing I can give it credit for. I still think overall the idea of the embargo for DC is absolutely terrible, and I think it's something that they, if you're not, especially because DC doesn't commit to anything. And my whole thing is that if DC isn't going to commit to a universe, they should at least drop the embargo. Let the DCEU, for example, like it's not that it's not a complete universe, but it's definitely a universe that really wasn't built up from the ground up. It started being that way, but then just kind of ever since the Justice League movie came out and just really flopped, it kind of just became, okay, screw it. This universe is fully developed. You can just assume the Justice League exists off screen. Use whatever characters you want. Do whatever you want with this world because we're no longer kind of building it. They basically kind of skipped phases 2 and 3 from Marvel, and they just went straight to where Marvel is right now with phase 4, and that's kind of what DC is at right now. The reason people aren't really happy about this though with DC is because they never built it up. And because we're not going to get it from the movie side of things, it sucks that we're also never going to see it from the television side of things, because now we have all these characters that, the CW could have used for the Arrowverse, a universe that actually did build itself up from nothing to something big. Now we'll never be able to see it as a fully established universe. We'll never see it get to reach where the DCEU is right now, even though, to my opinion, the Arrowverse put in more effort to get there than the DCEU did. So it kind of sucks that despite them putting in less effort, they still get all the fun toys that the Arrowverse isn't allowed to have, despite the fact that the Arrowverse is the one that really put in the effort of building the universe. You know what I mean? I'm sorry if I explained that really badly, but that's kind of my biggest thing of why I don't think the embargo is good and why I think it's like over bad. I think you're just restricting other creators and gaining nothing out of it from doing so. And again, I wouldn't mind it if they could just commit to a universe, but they can't. They want to have their Titans universe. They want to have their Doom Patrol universe. They want to have their, DCEU. They want to have their Arrowverse. And, they can't even commit to having a single universe on any of the same channels, because even the, different shows you get on HBO Max aren't connected. The shows you get on the CW are no longer connected, if you're not going to do this, stop with the embargo, DC. That's all I'm saying. What are your thoughts on Malcolm Merlyn? People still consider him the best Arrowverse villain and the most consistent in terms of his character. People also refuse to believe that he died at the end of Arrow Season 5 and are still waiting for him to return. As a character, I really enjoy Malcolm Merlyn, and I think John Barrowman played it perfectly. I think he was at his best personally during Legends of Tomorrow Season 2, and I really hope we get more Legion of Doom in the future, because I would love to see Malcolm Merlyn return. And I don't really think it matters if he died at the end of Arrow Season 5, because regardless, the entire universe has been rewritten, and we've seen that a majority of the deaths that came in Arrow are no longer a permanent thing. We know that Oliver Queen's mother is still alive. And I don't remember who else. I do remember we had a couple of his sister, sister on his dad's side, not Mia Queen, but his other sister is still alive now. So, I think there's no reason to expect Malcolm Merlyn isn't one of them. That could be alive, because there's no denying that there definitely was kind of a good side to him somewhere there, and I'm sure Oliver saw it. Now, whether or not he wanted to reward him for it by giving him a second chance at life, or if he kept him buried, after him stepping on a landmine. It really doesn't matter to the grand scheme of things, because we could still get him back regardless. So yeah, I really like Malcolm. I hope we do see him again in the future. I hope we get a Legion of Doom in the future of the Arrowverse. All right, this next one comes from AJ. I love the movie Monsters, starring Charlize Theron and Christine Ritchie, I think that's how you pronounce the last name, directed by Patty Jenkins, based on the actual story of American serial killer Aileen Wuornos? I'm not sure. I haven't seen Monsters, so I'm not sure, but I'll probably have to check it out later. It was really immersive and It was a really immersive and interesting film. The movie got a huge amount of praise in reviews and at the box office. This was the directorial debut of Patty Jenkins, written by her. Does this tell you that Patty Jenkins herself is a very competent filmmaker as long as the movie she wants to tell is interesting and not an easy script? Wonder Woman 84 was written by Jeff Johns, so she wasn't the sole person to blame. Perhaps she's better off making films that are dark and intense instead of comic book films. Plus, Wonder Woman 2017 was good because Patty Jenkins and Jeff Johns had to rewrite the movie from the original writer who had to leave the project for a TV show, but kept his part of the script. Okay, so yeah, overall, like with Wonder Woman 84, I don't think the directing was necessarily the worst part about the movie. I mean, I do think a lot of it does come down to the writing. A lot of the writing, I feel like, because knowing that Jeff Johns actually helped write the movie, I think what it is that, you know, when you're writing for a comic book and you're writing for a movie, they're very different processes for writing both, basically. Things that work really good in a comic book don't necessarily work really good on a movie, and then same exact thing can be said vice versa. So that all being said, yeah, I think the writing was the biggest issue with the movie, and I think had they had gotten like another writer that essentially kind of knew that there had to be a difference between comic book writing and movie writing, it could have been a lot better. Yeah, no, I do agree though. Patty Jenkins is a really good director, and I'm really looking forward to her Star Wars movie. And yeah, I don't think she's the sole reason that Wonder Woman 84 didn't work. The next questions come from Adrian Perez. What are your favorite supervillains and side characters of all time in Marvel, DC, and other properties? I really like a lot of the Marvel villains, man. It's really hard to kind of bring it down to just a handful, but I guess you could say Thanos, Killmonger, Loki, all great Marvel villains. DC side of things, I really like the look that we got at Apocalypse in the Snyder Cut of Justice League with Darkseid. Like, I really love his overall visual. Obviously, I can't say too much about his character because we don't know that much about him yet, but it is something I hope we get to explore sometime in the future, which I know a lot of people are doubting. But you never know. I would really love to see more from Darkseid. You know what I just realized too is that it's not just talking about like necessarily the movies. I guess we're also talking about the comic books in general. So, man, I mean, looking at the DC comic books of, big cast of different villains you could choose from and side characters. Like, I really love Lobo. I love Slade Wilson, who's Deathstroke. Yeah, I don't know why I forgot that name. He's always been one of my favorite villains ever since, the new Teen Titans of the 90s. And then speaking of Teen Titans, Teen Titans brings on a bunch of really interesting side characters every now and then. Like through the Jeff Johns run, I remember there were like a couple of kind of tech support characters that they had who unfortunately got killed off later on by this weird demonic dog thing. It's been way too long since I read that comic, so I don't know the full details. And then, I guess, if we're talking about side characters, that really, I feel like TV kind of does the side characters a lot better. So like characters like Cisco and Caitlin from The Flash, I think do their job incredibly well. Of course, Diggle, I think, is probably the best friend you could have in any of the Arrowverse shows. Like him and Oliver working together. They've always been an amazing team together. Even though, Diggle is labeled, by definition as a side character, I do think that he, towards the later half of like the Arrow series, he really has kind of become the second Green Arrow in a lot of ways. Not just because he physically wears the costume at one point, but because he really does feel like a second leader to the team whenever Oliver, is in distress or he's gone. Diggle's always the one kind of stepping up and, taking charge. And I've always really enjoyed him as a side character. As for the second question, what do you think of the new DCEU Black Adam film soon getting released, getting a release date? And what do you hope the film does differently compared to past superhero films in the DCEU? And what, or even want to be similar or take notes from the MCU? As for it being different from the DCEU, well, I really hope, like Black Adam, even though he's a character we can kind of sympathize with, I really hope he's a character that we're not supposed to necessarily root for. Like, we can sympathize with him without rooting for, because he's supposed to be kind of a villain in the comic books. Now, they seem to be taking a much more anti-hero approach, but with that being said, he's still colliding against the Justice Society of America, and you normally don't collide with them unless something you're doing is at least a little bit malicious. So I hope we get a character that, you know, we kind of want to root for, but we can't because he takes things a little bit too far, which is something that we haven't really gotten from other DC heroes. Notes that I would like them to take from Marvel, I guess. I guess just really focusing, like, Marvel does a good job of making these over the top characters feel very much like real people, or at the very least very enjoyable people that you just want to see more of. And I really hope Black Adam does that for us. I hope we get a lot of characters that we can find interesting even when they're not wearing a cape, which is something that I think Marvel has absolutely mastered with a lot of its characters. You know, you can enjoy a lot of these Marvel characters even when they're not suited up, and I really hope Black Adam is kind of that same way. But yeah, so originally I was planning to do this in one whole video, but just to give you guys a perspective on how far we are, I don't remember which question I started with, but essentially I think I've gotten through a third of the live viewer questions, and I'm already an hour into this, and unfortunately I have to start getting ready for work. So my plan is currently to make a second part of this that will hopefully come out on Friday. Friday is my goal for the second part of this video, which I do plan to do because we still have quite a few viewer questions that I want to answer. I don't want to leave us hanging. And yeah, but all that being said, hope you guys enjoyed this video. And if you want to see more of these in the future, definitely let us know in the comments below. Obviously, there is going to be one more on Friday where I finish everything else. But that all being said, if you want to see more if you want to see more of these after Friday, let us know in the comments below. But guys, don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to our channel. But of course, more than any of that, guys, just remember to always keep it A+, and I will talk to you all later. Have an awesome night, and be safe out there.